Makes your leg bend up and down.
Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Today is November the 18th, 2017. Those are both free sites. It's a team effort here at Household Dwyer, so you might hear some voices in the background. But remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let me just say, you have a fight that's going to happen. It's going to be a white-collar boxing match. What that means is it's going to be unlicensed, right? So the physical condition of the fighters isn't going to be overseen by a sanctioning body. And it involves one of the best fighters in his prime I have ever seen in my life, and that's the great James Toney. That's how I think of him. And he's fighting Sam Pomphrey, a guy who had some amateur success, but who hasn't fought a lot of pro fights. Now, let me just say, for the gamblers up front, looking at the highlights, I don't know a lot about Sam Pomphrey. He has a great nickname, Pump Action, right? Politically incorrect, but hey, this is boxing. He looks like he's an in-the-pocket fighter. And all I can say is James Toney, even at 49 years old, in my opinion, is the pick here. Understand, this is a diminished version of James Toney. This is a James Toney who lost to Charles Ellis. This is a James Toney who lost twice to Sam Peter, right? But understand that Toney has great defensive skills to the point where even in fights he lost, he did enough defensively to go the distance against Lucas Brown and to go the distance against Dennis Lebedev. Let's also remember Fresno is actually in the hunt for one of these sanctioning bodies' heavyweight titles. Understand, James Toney beat Fresno, and all of the fights I've mentioned happened when James Toney was well past his prime, right? So I like Toney over Sam Pomphrey. Understand, Toney got a KO in his last fight. Toney's skills are such that if you can move like Lucas Brown, right? If you can stay outside, use reach, not get inside, not engage James Toney. You might remember Toney against Roy Jones, who used the entire ring. That Jones fight is the blueprint on how to beat James Toney. But understand that if you try to come inside and if you try to control the pocket, you're going to be in a lot of trouble against James Toney, right? Mike Tyson fought Evander Holyfield. Mike Tyson lost twice to Evander Holyfield. If you ever want to see Evander Holyfield completely dominated in a match that I consider to be a masterpiece, look at his fight in 2003 against James Toney. Let me go one step further for 2003. You want another masterpiece? Look at the James Toney-Jirov fight from 2003. Understand that James Toney in 2003 won the Ring magazine and the Boxing Writers Association of America's Fighter of the Year award. Two different awards, two different esteemed groups decided in 2003 that James Toney was their Fighter of the Year. Now, to get a gauge on how great this fighter was, just understand that that was 12 years. Just write it down, 12 years after James Toney won the Fighter of the Year award in 1991 from both organizations, right? Think about it. A lot of these fighters, you see them, they're lucky to have 5, 6, 7-year careers. You have James Toney twice winning the Ring Magazine Fighter of the Year and twice winning the Boxing Writers Association of America Fighter of the Year, 12 years apart from each other. Truly great fighter. Understand, this is the rare fighter who's actually better than advertised. You realize that James Toney literally gained weight and won the heavyweight title. Right? This is a former heavyweight champion. He got stripped after the match for drugs. Right? But understand, Toney's skill level is such that this guy who was fighting down in the 160s, this is a guy who fought people like Michael Nunn, if you remember back in the day, eventually gained weight and actually won the heavyweight title. Now today, James Toney, and I'm being charitable here, is a shell of himself, right? I'm a big James Toney fan. I have no clue, at least half of the time, what James Toney is saying in interviews, right? We talk about guys who stick around the game too long, who take too many shots, right? And who look like they aren't themselves. In other words, you look at an interview of James Toney from his 20s, and you compare and contrast it with an interview of James Toney from today at 49, and oh my goodness, those two interviews are going to show you the risks involved in boxing, and it's considerable, right? It's considerable. One of the other problems Toney has is that boxing, quite frankly, is a young man's game. Let's be reasonable. And when you start saying that a guy was Fighter of the Year in 1991, 1991, just to put that in perspective, that's 5 years before Vladimir Klitschko wins his amateur Olympic gold medal, right? Then you know that Toney is well past his prime. All of that said, also the fact that Toney has opted to participate in an unlicensed white-collar boxing event should raise red flags on why a guy decides to go off-road if he still has the capability to pass tests to fight in properly sanctioned events. I'm guessing Toney is off-road because more than one person has noticed that he has slurred speech, because there is a bias against older fighters from licensing boards, right? They're looking at your MRI or whatever. If you're 35 and you have an MRI that looks a certain way, they'll say, okay, we'll sanction the bout. In my opinion, same MRI, if you're 49, people are going to have hesitation, right? No matter how great a fighter you are. But let me say, Toney in the pocket even today has few peers, right? Freddie Roach was once asked who the best pure talent was, best counterpuncher that he had trained. And he told the interviewer, James Toney. And I want people to look at all the fighters Freddie Roach has trained, right? Toney's countering skills really were exemplary. Understand too, Toney in his prime fought several tough fighters, Michael Nunn being one of them, another Mike McCallum, right? You need to look in judging a man on when he fought the guys he fought. I know Roy Jones fights Mike McCallum later. The Mike McCallum who fights James Toney is closer to his prime. McCallum, great fighter, gave the great Julian Jackson his first loss, right? Look up that fight, fascinating fight, on how to deal with the mid-range hooker, right, who's a power puncher. Well, let's just say James Toney early in his career was fighting the very best and beating them. I'm telling you, Giraffe was viewed as a monster at the time. James Toney took care of him. Here, of course, the problem is that was in 2003. It's now 2017, 14 years later. And when Toney fought Giraffe, that was really the second act for James Toney, right? Toney, of course, had been fighting for several years before that. So let's enjoy this bout. James Toney against Sam Pomphrey. The few tapes I've looked at on Pomphrey, it looks like he's aggressive, he's young, he's of the mindset that youth and aggression eventually is going to wear down a 49-year-old opponent, right? In my opinion, not this one. I like James Toney in this match. Hey, we're just going to call it as we see it, right? Toney has slurred speech. A strong argument can be made that he shouldn't be fighting, but skills are what they are. And this guy is still a great counterpuncher. I don't see Pomphrey allowing his ego to have him on his back foot against James Toney. And if you try to bum rush the pocket on James Toney, in my opinion, that's like trying to bum rush the pocket on Saul Alvarez, right? I think Toney wins this. Keep in mind, his last fight ended with Toney winning by 6th round KO. I would not even be surprised if this is a stoppage. Keep in mind the old adage, power is the last thing to go. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. If you want to talk about the fight in the comment section of this video, please do so. If you want to comment on 49-year-olds still in the game of boxing, right? Let's face it, boxing's that sport where no one really retires, right? Floyd Mayweather's retired after Andre Berto. Suddenly he's back against Conor McGregor, right? Roy Jones, when someone tells you they saw Roy Jones at a fight, you have to ask, was he in the ring, right? Because Jones, boxing commentator, future Boxing Hall of Famer, just can't give up being a fighter, right? I heard Paulie Malignaggi retired. Then I hear Paulie Malignaggi calling out Conor McGregor, right? I heard Oscar De La Hoya retired. Now I'm hearing Oscar De La Hoya calling out Conor McGregor, right? Ricky Hatton was retired. Now Ricky Hatton is supposedly coming back, right? There's something about boxing that draws men back in. This is the mistress guys can't leave, right? Even when they have millions of dollars and other options and fame and fortune and stuff like that, and even when their legacies are going to be questioned if they come back, right? So James Toney, for whatever reason, is still fighting, right? I like him in this fight. Let me hear from you. I look forward to reading your comments. Thanks for stopping by.